Now we are live on Facebook. Hello, Facebook world. Uh, all right, so we will get started. Hello, everybody. Some of you have been learning with me for years. Some of you I've never met before, and most of us were somewhere in the middle of what I hope is a long and beautiful relationship. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Beckstern Rosenblatt. I am the North American faculty for the conservative yeshiva at the Fuchsberg Jerusalem Center, which is a mouthful. What that means is I get to teach Torah, teach Tanakh for one of the best, most exciting institutions in the whole wide world. We are based in Jerusalem, but I do a ton of online learning. If you want to come do some like real wonderful, serious learning in Jerusalem and Israel this summer, look up the Fuchsberg Jerusalem Center, look up the Conservative Yeshiva. And if you want to say, well, that sounds lovely, but I can't get to Jerusalem this summer, then give me an email and we can talk about online learning. I run an ongoing Parshat HaShavua weekly Torah portion class, and I do all sorts of other online teaching like this. So thank you to the Advanced Learning Institute and Rabbi Marcia for having me here. And thank you to y'all for showing up. For those of you who don't know how this works, I talk at you a tiny bit, but for the most part, we are all making meaning together. So I'm going to talk at you a tiny bit, and then you are going to talk right back at me, and we're going to create something beautiful and strange. When you talk by raising your actual hand or your Zoom hand, and you make your point and you get out. So you say the 2 sentences, the max 3 sentences, and then you get out. If you have a dissertation on the topic, send it to me, but don't share it with us all right here, right now. Cool. All right. So what are we doing today? We are in the 3rd of 3 classes on governance and leadership in Genesis. If you missed the first 2, that's fine. They're recordings, and I'm going to give you the 30-second versions of those first 2 classes. So what we're doing here is looking to Genesis for clues on how to govern, how to lead. And the interesting thing about this is that's what Genesis is about. That's what God does and what God instructs us to do. In the first class, we looked at this verse in Genesis where we are in Genesis 1, God creates the whole world. And then God says, all right, humans are created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim, and humans have dominion. Humans should rule over all the animals. And we said, okay, so if there's some connection to being created in the image of God and ruling, what is it that God does that we should copy as rulers? How do we understand ruling to be something in the image of God? And what we looked at, what we discussed, was mostly the idea of ruling as creating order, as creating structure, as creating separation, and that you set up the right order, and everything else falls into agreement. Everything else is okay. And that you assess that order in an ongoing way. You look and you say, is this good? All right, this is good. I'll keep doing it. It's about second class, we looked at Abraham. And Abraham was the first time all of a sudden it wasn't just humans ruling over animals, it was humans ruling over humans. And we talked a lot about the idea of blessing because Abraham is not told to rule other people. However, Abraham is set up in some sort of hierarchical position over the other nations because through Abraham will those other nations be blessed. We talked a lot about covenant and we talked a lot about blessing as forms of leadership, forms of governance and ruling. Now, today's class, we're going to look at Joseph. Oh, sorry, one more thing about Abraham. Abraham also, we looked at how he wasn't a king, but he was interacting with kings. He was sort of this anti-kingship model. He was a model of how to rule as someone who's not actually ruling, how to how to have all the trappings of leadership without just saying, yeah, I'm king and I've got all of the privileges that come with that. So in today's class, we'll be looking at Joseph. And Joseph is interesting because he is this guy who's obsessed with ruling. Like from the very beginning of his story, Joseph is a little, pipsqueak 17-year-old who wants to rule the world, who has dreams of dominion. So we're going to trace that idea of ruling through Joseph's story and see what happens to it. We're looking specifically, though, not just at Joseph's story, but at how that idea of ruling develops from B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. Because in the Joseph story, there's this underlying tension, there's this underlying violence between Joseph and his brothers, between Joseph and other people. And one of the things about ruling is it's the person who rules is the one who controls the means of violence. So the question for today is, what is that relationship between violence and power, between violence and ruling? How does that progress through Genesis? And how does that reach its culmination in the Joseph story? We'll be thinking also back to Abraham and saying, okay, well, is Abraham an alternative model or is he the same model? Tov, and that's all I'm going to talk at you for right now. So any thoughts or questions on any of that so far? Raise your actual hand or raise your Zoom hand. No? Awesome. Cool. So I've got a source sheet for you all, which I'm going to share in the chat. I'm not going to share my screen because I prefer to see you guys than to see the text. Let me just open the chat so I can share it. There you go. So just click on the link and then you will have the source sheet. We're actually going to start all the way back in Genesis 1. And what we'll be doing is tracing the word mashal, which is the word to rule, through Genesis and seeing how it's going to appear in the Joseph story in a way that is sort of shocking. So I'll give you the preview, which is Joseph's dreams, all the way in the beginning of the Joseph story, Genesis 37. Joseph's going to have this dream where he says, where he tells his brothers the dream, and his brothers say to him, Hamaloch timloch aleinu, im mashol timshol banu. His brothers say to him, will you reign over us? Will you rule over us? And so that's that mashal, timshol word going on there. It starts way back in Genesis, though. So you guys ready? We'll start Genesis 1. We're back in the creation story. Anybody here? Do I have any chanters here? Anybody who chants Hebrew? No? Oh, Alan, hello. Alan, do you want to go for it? Genesis 1 verses 16 to 19?
Hold on a second. I'm on the phone. It doesn't work that well. But here's a Tanakh. Genesis 1.
Verses 16 to 19.
Okay. Genesis 1. Vayas Elohim es shnei amoros hagdolim es hamor hagadol lememshel es hayom es hamor hakaton lememshel es halayla beis hakochavim vayiteinu som Elohim birkiah hagramayim lo hayir al haaretz ולמשול ביום ובלילה, ולהבדיל בין אור ובין החושך, וירא אלוהים כי טוב.
And 19?
Oh, Vajere, vajvoker, jongrevi.
Amazing, Alan. Thank you. Um, yes, it's always wonderful having people chant. So I'm gonna read the English translation. This is creation story, and God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the smaller light to rule the night, and also the stars. And God put them in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth, to rule over day and night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning the fourth day. All right. So this is our first time we get this ruling word, this limshol word. Talk to me. Why? Like we have 6 days of creation. This is the only time that we're gonna have mashal as ruling show up. Why ruling with these lights? What is it about these lights that like requires us to have the idea of ruling? How do these lights rule? What are they doing here? Make sense of this for me. No wrong answers, and also there's no real right answers. This is your thoughts, and we'll build something together. So who's got a thought? Rhea, start us out. Oh, Rhea, make sure you unmute. There you go.
Oh,
Nope, you're unmuted now. Go. Rhea, wait, we can't hear you. There we go. You're perfect.
Okay. I couldn't undo it. There's something, my computer is not awake yet. So, but I am. So that the light is not necessarily the light that you see with your eyes, that these are ideas, or could be, we could think of light as being more than what we see visually. And so that we have to think about, what are the two lights? What are these two concepts? I don't know yet. I have to think about that. So that's the only thing. It's more complicated, I think, than what the actual words say.
Interesting. Yeah. So we have Yom and Laila. We have day and night that are going to repeat every stage of creation, all 6 days. And yet this is the point at which we have ruling. And you're saying, okay, so maybe it's not just the idea that the lights are ruling over the days. We gotta dig our teeth into what it means, what these lights are referring to. Okay, Tova, dig your teeth in.
I think maybe, I never thought of it this way before, but it may also be about human behavior, that we need a period of light to think. We need a period of darkness to rest. And this is the way we can manage the world. We couldn't manage the world if it was 24 hours of daylight or 24 hours of darkness. And so it's important in every creation to say, Vayahi Er, Vayahi Voka.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So two big things there, right? Is like one, there's some connection to humans, and humans, like it's almost like a little like the order for the 7 days of creation is 1 day of Shabbat, is that we have this built-in rest period. And you're saying it's not just a 7th day Shabbat thing, it's a every night thing. It's imposing order on, like by creating a day and night, you're imposing order on humans, allowing them to function. Seder. Okay, cool. Chuck, and then Alan, and then Rhea.
I have a question based on, maybe I didn't hear right, or maybe my Hebrew isn't good enough. Probably both. Mashal, to rule. Isn't that also the name for an example? Lemashal?
Yeah,
Is it the same word?
it is 100% the same 3 letters. Yeah.
Good.
Good question. And that's midrashically, you can do fun things with that, but they're three letters that are the same root, same three letters. They are different meanings. Cool. Alan and then Rhea.
I am taking issue with the translators. They're taking liberties. What literally it's saying is for the greater light for the day regime, the memshelet is a government. That's not a verb, it's a noun, and the same thing with the second usage.
Yes, and it's not government, it's a participle. It's so for the ruling.
Oh,
The translator that here is me. But yeah, you're right. A better translation would be the greater light for the ruling of the day.
which doesn't mean that they're doing the ruling themselves, but they're serving the rulers.
The memshit. No, I don't think so. Because it's for the act of ruling the day. It's is the way a participle works. It's not like for the ones who are ruling the day, it's the act of ruling the day.
If you have a second, I serve as a Zoom master for teachers who can't deal with the buttons and all the rest themselves. So I am in that service of their doing that action.
Yes.
Small point.
Interesting point. Interesting point. Let's see what other people make of it. Cool. Okay. Rhea, keep going.
So I'm thinking of another C. C, I set before you. There's choices that we make. What is the rest of it? Not here, not in this quote, but another place about doing, that God sets before us the choice to do X or Y. X is going to turn out good and Y not. So, and then we have the other one about hear. So hear Israel, and God wants Israel to hear God. And so all of these senses, I think there's more to it. And I don't know where else see as an imperative is in this whole development of the world and of people and the relationships. So is there can we trace different areas in this development time with the seeing and hearing, not tasting, but yeah.
Yeah, there's something, Rhea, that is incredibly interesting, and it's a whole other course about seeing and hearing that we have in Genesis, what is it, Genesis 19 or Genesis 20, and then Genesis 21 and then Genesis 22, when first Hagar names God and then Abraham names God. It's God of seeing, or God who sees me. And that it goes on, this idea of seeing the face of God or not seeing the face of God shows up again in our parsha this week.
And then God searching, where are you? Where are you?
Yeah.
This whole thing of using our senses but not really connecting, and then trying to connect. There's other meanings to this.
Definitely. There's the whole deep well of meanings. Take a little bit of it, take a taste of it, and bring it back to my question, Rhea. Why are the lights related to ruling here?
Well, it's becoming aware of what's going on. If you're in charge of something, you have to know what that something is. Otherwise, that we can ignore, or Adam and Eve, or Adam could ignore if he doesn't pay attention to what his environment is. And then God looks for him. Where are you? And it's all this trying to locate and be aware of and understand what is all around.
Awesome. Really cool. Okay, I want to come back to a second I'm going to combine Tova and Alan's points here, and then we're going to move on because we got to spend a second on each of these sources and actually get to the Joseph story. So Alan's raised this really interesting point about what does it mean that the greater light was for the act of ruling, or for the ruling of the day, and the smaller light was for the ruling of the night. And he's saying, well, maybe the lights themselves aren't the ones doing the ruling. The lights are like allowing the ruling to be done, or servicing the rulers in some way, which is similar to what Tova said about the lights acting in service of the humans, the lights allowing the humans to wake up and go to sleep, allowing the humans, similar to Rhea as well, about allowing the humans to see what needed to be seen, to know what needed to be known. Okay, cool. Any last thought though about what the ruling here is? What is it that these lights, how these lights either act as helpmates to the rulers or rulers themselves? What is it about ruling? Why does ruling show up in this act of creation? And if you're hiding off screen, that's totally fine. You can raise your Zoom hand and I'll be able to call on you anyway. Sandra, was that a okay?
You know, because we're saying ruling, but maybe it really is enabling.
Okay.
And Joseph's he himself did not interpret this dream.
Great. Okay.
It was his brothers who interpreted as you would be the ruler.
Great. Okay. Okay.
So maybe, you know, Memshelet is enabling you to do things in the day.
Great. Okay. Wonderful. And which is back to Alan's point too. Like, these lights don't necessarily know that they're the ones doing the ruling, right? These lights are inanimate objects. And that's one of the things that distinguishes the Israelite religion from other religions, is that, like, we're not worshiping the sun and the moon here at all. That there's something, like, we want to read the lights as in service of the humans. We want to read the lights as like creating the conditions for existence. Diane just wrote in the chat, do we have need of ruling, because without it we might revert to chaos? Yeah, Yafei, I think there's definitely something there too, where if the lights are creating the conditions for existence, they're creating the difference between day and night. They're creating the thing that allows us to have order. Tov. All right, we're going to keep going to Genesis 3 now. This is end of the Garden of Eden story. We've just cursed the snake, and now God is going to give this lovely little sentence to Eve. Alan, you just disappeared. Are you still up for chanting, or
I'm here.
oh, hello.
I'm multitasking. By the way, I read Ashkenazic to honor my bar mitzvah teacher from Czechoslovakia. Everything else I do is Sephardic. So it just sounds wrong to me in Sephardic. Sorry about that.
No, it's amazing. I've been loving this.
El Shamar Harbe Itzvonech Veheronech Betzev Tel Divonim Vel Isheich Teshukatech Vehu Yimshal Boch.
And I'll read the English. And to the woman, God said, I will greatly increase your pain or sorrow in pregnancy. With pain or sorrow, you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Okay. Fun times. And just with this one, Alan, would you keep going and read or chant Genesis 4, verse 7 as well? And then we'll talk about
Hallo im tetiv seis, ve'im lo setiv, la pesach chatas roveitz, ve'lecha teshukaso, vata tim shalbo.
Yefeh. So this is just after we get kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Eve gives birth to 2 children, Cain and then Abel. Abel offers his sacrifice and God takes it. Cain offers his sacrifice and God doesn't take it. Cain gets angry and God says to Cain, is it not the case that if you do well, there's uplift? And if you do not do well, at the door sin lies in wait. It or his desire is for you, and you can rule over it or him. This is Genesis 4:7. This Cain thing is notoriously bad Hebrew. Like, it's notoriously impossible to translate because the nouns and the verbs don't actually agree with each other. It's a whole complicated thing. We're not going to go deep into the problems behind this verse right now. So, but just talking about what ruling is doing in both of these verses, what the desire, what the connection between desire and ruling is here, what the who's doing ruling and who's ruling over what. How do you understand these 2 verses as related to mashal, as related to ruling? Alan, take us away.
In the language of the Haggadah, I am now 76 years old, and up to this time, I've never thought that sex was bad. This is the first time I've ever looked at the word teshukah in these 2 verses. The second verse, where it's clearly something that you want to avoid, and in the first one, it's a necessary thing. It's not called evil. It just is. It's a desire rather than a desire for bad.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So, and Alan, keep pushing that a little bit. Relate that back to what the ruling thing is.
Well, there we don't have a plus or minus sign on it. It just is. That it occurs. Well, I take it back. There is a plus or minus sign, not specifically about that, but I think for this day we see a kitov later on.
Interesting. Okay. Tova.
Yeah, I think in the first, verse that we're talking about, where the pain of childbirth, and you have to also acknowledge your husband. I think what we're talking about is the human part or partner in creation, because that we're creating life, and I think it's very hard, it's very painful, and your husband has something to do with it, even though you're and we're partners with God at that time. And the second verse that we read was, I think, the pain of ruling and the responsibility of ruling.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, so that there's something about when we're thinking of ruling as being B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. You're saying, okay, well, so in some ways, the first ruling that happens is over your children. It's like we create in the image of God when we create literal new humans. And so when we look at ruling, we can think about ruling as like, how do we create new humans, and how do we relate to those children of ours we've created? Yefeh, okay. And that there's perhaps, like, that's why childbirth is painful. It's not painful as a punishment for Eve listening to the snake or whatever. It's painful to say, like, be careful what you wish for. Be careful if you're ruling, that this is dangerous. It is dangerous to be ruling over other people. So beware, know that this is a painful thing. That's really cool.
And maybe remember, you're really not God. You're only a partner here with God, but you're not God.
And that's what Eve says, right? Ki kaniti ish et Hashem, right? Because I have acquired a man with God. Awesome. Okay. Rhea.
So I wanted to ask, because Alan pointed out about the word being the same, teshukatach and teshukato. And so is one the desire, the other is the sin. Are they the same?
No, it's in Genesis 3 and Genesis 4, the teshukah word appears. In both cases, that word is desire or longing.
And so what is what is the word for sin?
Is chatat. It's 3 words before teshukato in Genesis 7. And one of the reasons this Genesis 4 verse 7 is complicated is because chatat is a feminine word, but teshukato, which is like is the O at the end indicates masculine. It's chatat can't be the antecedent of the desire or longing here. So it's not like your desire or longing for the sin, or sorry, the sin's desire or longing is for you. It's got to be something else's desire or longing.
So desire and sin are not they're not bound to as one is the other. It's the face of the one is the face of the other.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, they're clearly related to each other here in this verse. They're not grammatically the same, but they're somehow linked, and it's worth exploring what the relationship is between sin and longing. Sin, longing, and ruling. Tova started to set up something that was really cool about okay, well, ruling is pain. Ruling is difficult and it hurts. I love where you're going, Ray, about whether there's something there where like there's some connection between ruling and desire, ruling and longing, ruling and sinning. Thoughts on that, anybody? We got so many people hiding off camera. I know you're there. I know you're thinking. As they say in Song of Songs, let me see your face. No? All right. Okay, so there's something cool going on with the idea that humans rule over other people, but there's something inherently painful, inherently maybe even sinful in our desire to rule. That there's in Genesis 1, the lights are the ones who are allowing ruling to happen, or the ones who are ruling without ever having requested it. But once you want to be a ruler, once you're requesting to be a ruler, once you like go forth and say, yeah, let me rule, you introduce pain into the world. You introduce sin into the world. There's some connection between desire and pain. And perhaps there's some connection between desire for rule and pain. All right. We're going to jump into Genesis 37, the beginning of the Joseph story. And you're going to see a ton of the words that we just read reappear here, and a ton of the concepts that we just read reappear here. So it's not just mashal that's going to the ruling word that's going to reappear here. It's this whole world we've just constructed is retold here in Genesis 37. Alan, are you up for chanting Genesis 37 verses 5 to 10?
With the trup and the vowels, anytime. No study required. Vaya chalom Yosef chalom vayaged lechov ויוסיפו עוד צנוסו, ויאמר עליהם שמעונה החלום הזה אשר חלמתי, והנה אנחנו מלומים בסוך השדה, והנה כמה אלומסי וגם ניצבה, והנה ססובנה אלומוסיכם ותשתחוונה לאלומסי, ויאמרו לו אחיו המלוך תמלוך עלינו, ימשול תמשול בנו, ויוסיפו עוד צנוסו על חלומוסו ועל דבריו, ויחלום עוד חלום אחר ויספר עשו לאחיו, ויאמר הנה חלמתי חלום עוד, והנה השמש והירח ו11 כוכבים משתחווים לי, ויספר אל אביו אל אחיו, ויגר בו אביו, ויאמר לו מה החלום הזה אשר חלמת, הבוא נבוא אני ועמך ואחיך להשתחוות לך ארצה, ויקנו בו אחיו ואביו שמר את הדבר.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Alan. And I'll read the English translation. Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. And he said to them, "Here, please, this dream I dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. And then my sheaf rose up and also stood upright. And then your sheaves gathered around, and they bowed to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Will you reign over us? Will you rule over us?" And they hated him even more for his words. And he dreamed again another dream, and he told it to his brothers. He said, "Behold, I dreamed another dream. There were the sun and the moon and 12 stars bowing to me." He told it to his father and to his brothers, and his father rebuked him, and he said to him, "What is this dream that you dreamed? Will I and your mother and your brothers come to bow to you all the way to the earth?" And his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter. Oh. All right. Starting off, tell me what the things are that the parallels between this section and the creation story section, the Garden of Eden story, and the Cain story that we just read. What are shared themes? What are shared images? Shared words? What repeats in these stories? Yeah.
One of the things I think that repeats, of course, in the story is that they're interpreting that his brother, not his brother, but Joseph will rule, and the other brothers will bow down to him, as will his father and many people. This was actually part of my parsha for my bat mitzvah when I was 83. So the story of Joseph, the very beginning was, so it's really kind of interesting because he does dream these dreams, and these dreams come to fruition in later years, but in a good way, not a bad way. But they are thinking, we have to bow down to our young brother. This is not good.
Amazing. Yeah, so we've got sibling rivalry front and center, just the same as in the Cain story. Amazing. Okay. Keep pushing that, or keep pushing other shared themes, shared words. Alan, what have you got?
I really like the way you concordanced these words together so nicely. I never paid attention to the possibility of a valence, both for teshukah, desire, and for the act of malach, of ruling. We have where it's a good thing, and we have where it's viewed as a bad thing, a negative valence. I never noticed that before. It's not a neutral word.
it's not a neutral world at all. And it's also, I mean, and what I want to get at as well, Alan, is like, is it the same thing in both times? Like, is it that the word is not neutral, or the way of ruling is not neutral? Is that there are different ways that you can rule? Cool. Okay. Tova, is that a yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, I think, although I don't know if it's relevant, that we see in these passages things which are not complimentary to Joseph. First of all, we see even before his dreams, he was hated. He was, kind of not such a great teenager. And then when he tells his second dream to his father, it really doesn't all come true. His mother is dead before they come. So, and it's the brothers who interpret. It's not, it's not Joseph himself.
Great. Yeah. Brothers interpret the first one, father interprets the second one.
But the brothers in the first one, it's because they hate him to begin with. So they're gonna, and the father just doesn't get it right.
Okay. We're on the tip of something really cool with what's going on with ruling. Before we get there, though, I need more parallels with the first couple of stories. Chuck, what have you got?
I don't think this answers your question, but every time I read this, I think of the concept of sticking somebody in the eye with a sharp stick.
Oh, okay.
Telling his brothers, well, I'm going to rule you. Nah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad he's not running for office.
Yeah. Okay. So that, like, at this point, Joseph isn't actually ruling, but he's having these dreams, and his brothers are scared he's going to rule. His father's scared he's going to rule. And he's like, he's nudging, he's pushing, he's sticking somebody in the eye with a sharp stick, which is, I mean, as Sandra pointed out, is back to Cain and Abel, right? We didn't read the whole story, but like, and Cain said to Abel, ... and we don't know what Cain said to Abel, and then Cain rose up and killed Abel. That there's here, it's almost like we get the fill-in of what Cain could have said to Abel that would have led to siblings killing each other. Cool. Okay, Rhea.
So what does it mean that his father kept the matter? There's a difference between the father's response and the brother's response, but what is that difference?
Great. Okay. Yeah. Great. Good question. Why is Jacob keeping the matter? We've seen Jacob do that before with Dinah, right? And that there's this question of what does it mean to be someone who's ruled? That in both of these times, both interpretations of the dreams, the brothers and then Jacob the father are scared that they are ruled, and yet they have very different responses to this like coming rulership. Give me 1 minute, Alan. Y'all aren't playing my game, so I'm going to play my game by myself for a minute. Which is what are the correspondences between this and what we've just read? Well, there's a couple, right? There's the idea of all these lights in the sky, right? There's the sun and the moon and the stars, which was how we started off in Genesis 1. That in Genesis 1, we had the two great lights, which are presumably the sun and the moon, ruling or acting as helpmates to the ones who are ruling in Alan's interpretation. And here in Joseph's dream, even the sun and the moon are bowing, and the 12 stars are bowing to Joseph. And Jacob will interpret that as saying, okay, that's your mom and your dad and your brothers. But in light, pardon the pun, of Genesis 1, there's perhaps a different way to look at it, or there's perhaps more meaning to it. What do you guys make of that?
You know, well, first of all, in the first story, the light is not a ruler really, but a helper. And it's true in the Joseph story. He doesn't rule over the brothers, but he is enables them to have sustenance.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay, okay. So there's something about like what is the correct way to rule? Like what does it mean to be a ruler? It means to be like a public servant, essentially. And when Joseph serves as a public servant, he is successful. He becomes a ruler. When Joseph like takes the like grandioseness of being a ruler and parades around with it, that's the point where it gets thrown down a pit. The same way that like the sun and the moon and the stars aren't aware of the facts that they're ruling. They're not parading the fact that they're ruling. They don't even really care that they're ruling because they're not sentient. Rather, they're creating the conditions for differentiation for success. Cool, Tova. Okay, Alan, back to you.
First of all, I like it, but that's a bit of a stretch, and that's tying it to what his role in Egypt is. Was he really the ruler? Not really. He was the prime minister for Pharaoh. I just wanted to answer a prior question. This business of Shamar et Hadavar. He watched the thing, which means he didn't say anything at that time. That's somebody who's cunning rather than an actor. And we see that in the Dina story also.
Yep. Yep. Great. Great. Okay. Okay. Cool. Thank you, Alan. All right. Last question on this section, and then we'll do the final section. How does Joseph imagine ruling in this section? Like what is Joseph excited about? What does ruling look like for this little 17-year-old pipsqueak? What are the good bits? What is he responsible to do? What are his duties and what are his privileges? Yeah, right.
He has privileges.
Yeah. Oh, it's that to be bowed down to. I don't want to make comparisons with our present political stuff, but the thing about ruling is everybody bows down to me.
Okay.
Even the stars and the moon and the sun.
Okay. Yefé. Tova, keep.
I don't know. I don't know that he was thinking of ruling. I think he wanted to be I think this teenager was thinking of being the best, the smartest, the number one. I think that his brothers and even his father thought that he had dreams of grandeur, I think beyond what he really had.
Interesting. All he wanted was his whole family to bow down to him, and
well, he didn't say that. The brothers said that.
Yefé, all he wanted, okay, great. All he wanted was for Diane, you said the natural world to bow down to him. That he had the wheat bowing down to him, and he had the sun and the moon and the stars bowing down to him, which is grandiose, but it's not.
He was the number one guy.
Okay.
He's a nasty kid.
He's a nasty kid, Yefé. Okay. Yeah, I mean, teenager. Nobody likes him. Okay.
And he doesn't realize his ability to really, for him to analyze dreams until he's in Egypt, and then he needs a way to be better.
Great. Okay. I think you're onto something there, Tova, where it's like, what are the privileges and responsibilities of ruling here? Well, Joseph's doing a horrible job. Joseph saying like I want things, I want whatever, the natural world to bow down to me. I want the privileges, but he's taking zero responsibility. He's not, in fact, acting as a ruler. He's not saying, okay, well, if I have dreams, I best interpret my dreams. I best make sense of this for people. Like, what it is to rule is to be able to talk to people in their own language. It's to be able to take the natural world and translate it in from chaos into order, just as God did for us in Genesis 1. Instead, Joseph's just like word vomiting his dreams all over us. Really cool. Okay. And it comes back to Alan's question, Alan's point about, well, was Joseph even ever actually the ruler, or is he just this prime minister under Pharaoh? Well, yes. And coming back to Genesis 1, right? God created the two big luminaries. God creates the sun and the moon, which one means that neither of them is ruling the whole time. Ruling is not a permanent state that either the sun or the moon does. It's one rules for day and one rules for night. And two, there's the big great luminary, the sun, and the smaller luminary, the moon, which are essentially the positions that Joseph and Pharaoh are going to play. We've got very little time, so jumping into this last bit, Genesis 45, which is Joseph's revealing himself to his brothers. I've given you like a selection of the verses, so there's skipping here. Alan, would you chant for us in a sec? And as he's chanting, listen to words that are repeating from what we've read already. Listen for not just to rule, Michelle, but listen to see if you can hear other words that are repeating. Go for it, Alan.
Vayomer Yosef el Echav Geshuna Eloi Vayigashu Vayomer Ani Yosef Achichem Asher Mechartem Osi Mitzrayim V'ata al teotzu Vayichar Beinechem Ki Mechartem Osi Heina Ki Lemichia Shalachani Elohim Lifnechem Vata lo atem shalachtem osi heina ki Elohim vayasimeni la'av leFaro ula'adon lechol beso u'moshel b'chol eretz Mitzrayim Maharu v'alu elavi v'amartem elav Ko'amar bincha Yosef Samani Elohim La'adon L'chol Misrayim Redoi Lahai Al Tamod Ve'agidu Lo Lemor Od Yosef Chai V'chihu Moshel B'chol Eretz Mitzrayim Vayafag Libo
Beautiful. Thank you, Alan. All right, and I'll read the English. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Draw near to me." And they drew near. And he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold to Egypt. And now do not be in pain or sorrow, and do not become angry that you sold me here, because Elohim sent me here before you in order to sustain life. And now you did not send me here, but rather Elohim did, and he placed me as father to Pharaoh and as master of all his house and as ruler of the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father, and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, Elohim placed me as master to all Egypt. Come down to me, do not stand. And the brothers told Jacob, saying, Joseph is still alive, and therefore he is ruling over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart stopped because he did not believe them. Okay, so there's cool correspondences with the words we read above. The most interesting one is the pain and sorrow, the te'etzevu, which is we found with Eve bearing in pain or sorrow, which Tova, you said you made such a nice comment on. I think there's, and then also this idea of anger. We saw Cain become angry. We've got 2 minutes, so I want really quickly looking at the differences between verses 8 and 9. How does Joseph understand ruling in verses 8 and 9? And how does he says one thing to his brothers, and then he asks his brothers to say something a little different to his father. How does Joseph understanding ruling, and why does he change the words between verses 8 and 9? Yeah, Tova.
I don't really know the answer to your question, but I just realized, when we were reading it, his message to his father is, Od Yosef Chai. And when the brothers come to him, he says, Od Avichai. And I think what he's looking for is, do I still have a relationship with my father?
Definitely beautiful.
And of course, at the beginning, I mean, what Joseph says to them is not true. They didn't sell him. They thought they had killed him.
Yes, and okay, cool. And Alan, was that a hand? Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to raise your hand on an iPhone. It's interesting. There's two things that relate here. To his brothers, he uses the word to rule, Moshel. To his father, he just calls himself a mere lord. He doesn't use that same word. The other tie is to his brothers. He says, "I'm like a father to Pharaoh," but he's saying, "But speak to my father."
Great. Yeah, great, fantastic. I mean, this is a repeat, right? He's in some ways he's interpreting those two dreams here. That twice he had dreams, the first time for his brothers and the second time for his father. And his brothers interpret it, and then his father. Here he's saying, okay, brothers, this is what it means. And to his father, he says, no, this is what it means. And for his father, he says, okay, what is ruling? Or to both of them, he says, what is ruling? It's being placed in a position of power by Elohim for the sake of bringing life. And it's one thing to be an Adon, to be a master. It's another thing to be a mashal, to be a ruler. And Joseph is reluctant to grasp at that ruler. The final point I want to make really quick is in verse 9 here, Joseph says to his father, Reda alai al ta'amod, which is, come down to me. Don't stand around, don't wait, don't tarry. But Reda there, its root is yavad, go down. It looks the same as the word that means rule that we get in Genesis 1 when God says to, like, I've made man in the image of Elohim in order to rule. And so there's even more so, as Diane's saying, he's learned humility to his father. Joseph's saying, come down, but he's also saying in some ways he's playing on that root. He's playing with, you rule over me. He's playing with the, like, I'm giving power back to you, Father. I'm saying, like, I need you. I am not able to rule by myself. I'm not interested in ruling. I'm interested in family relation. Tov. There's so much more going on here. We didn't get a chance to talk about Abraham in comparison to Joseph at all. So if you have thoughts about that, please have a think. Please share them with me. You should have my email from the source sheet. And thank you all for learning with me for the past couple of weeks. I look forward to learning with all of you all again. Big thanks to Alan for chanting, and Shavuot Tov.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Bex.
Okay.
Thank